When the black Mercedes rolled slowly into the grand driveway, the air around the Aidwale mansion seemed to shift. The evening sky above Nairobi was painted gold and crimson as Michael Aidwale stepped out of the car, his polished shoes meeting the gravel with purpose. He was a tall, confident black African man in his mid-30s, his suit tailored to perfection, his eyes sharp but thoughtful. It had been 10 long years since he left Africa to build his empire abroad, and now, a self-made millionaire, he had finally returned home. But beneath his calm smile, his heart carried the weight of memories, losses, and unanswered questions. He didn't know that within the walls of his childhood home, a secret had been waiting, one that would shatter everything he believed about his past. As Michael approached the entrance, the tall mahogany doors opened slowly. Standing there was Grace, the family maid who had raised him like her own since he was a boy. Her skin glowed softly under the porch light, her modern uniform crisp, her posture proud. For a moment both froze, time holding its breath. "Michael, is that really you?" she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. He smiled warmly and said, "Grace, you haven't aged a day." She chuckled softly, though her eyes betrayed something deeper, a flicker of fear or maybe regret. Michael didn't notice. He was too busy feeling the nostalgia of home. Inside, the mansion was exactly as he remembered. The elegant marble floors, the towering African art, the scent of old polished wood, it was all the same, yet it felt emptier somehow. Grace followed him quietly as he moved from room to room. "You've kept the place perfect," he said, his voice softer now. "My father would be proud." Grace nodded, her eyes glistening. "Your father wanted this house to stay alive. Even after him," she replied. But as she said those words, her hands trembled slightly. Later that evening, Grace prepared his dinner: grilled tilapia, ugali, and sautéed vegetables, exactly how he loved it. When she set the plate down, he smiled. "You still remember my favorite meal?" Grace tried to smile back, but her voice cracked as she said, "There's something I've wanted to tell you for a long time, Michael. Since your father passed, But before she could finish, a knock came at the door. A young woman entered, confident and well-dressed in a fitted white blouse and black trousers. "Mr. Aidwale," she greeted. "I'm Amara, your father's lawyer's assistant. I've come to deliver some documents regarding your inheritance. There's something new your father added before his death." Grace's face turned pale. The spoon in her hand fell with a soft clang. Michael noticed but said nothing. When Amara left, he looked at Grace. "You seemed shaken when she mentioned my father's will." Grace forced a faint smile. "It's nothing, Michael, it's just memories." But her voice broke again. Something was clearly wrong. That night, when silence filled the halls, Michael wandered into his father's old study. Everything was coated in dust except one drawer that looked recently opened. Inside it, he found an envelope addressed to him in Grace's handwriting. Confused, he opened it, and his eyes widened as he read, "If you are reading this, it means your father never told you the truth. You deserve to know what really happened before he died." The letter stopped halfway through, as if someone had hidden it in a rush. Michael's heartbeat quickened. He hurried to find Grace, but she was gone. Only her phone lay on the living room table, unlocked, with a message half-typed to someone named Kwiku. "He's back. I don't know how long I can keep it hidden." The next morning, Michael drove to the city and visited his father's lawyer. The elderly man greeted him warmly, but hesitated when asked about the will. "Your father was a great man," he said carefully, "but not without his secrets. Months before his death, he told me something. Unusual," he said. "Grace holds the key to everything my son must understand." Michael left more confused than ever, questions swirling in his mind. When he returned home, Grace was outside in the garden, tending to the flowers, her modern black dress swaying in the wind. She looked lost in thought. Michael stood at the balcony above, watching her with mixed feelings, anger, confusion, and an ache he couldn't name. That evening, as the sun dipped low, he finally confronted her. "Grace, I found your letter." "What are you hiding from me?" She froze, the color draining from her face. "I promised your father I'd protect you," she whispered. "But now that you're home, I can't keep that promise anymore." Michael's voice was sharp now. "Protect me from what?" Grace's eyes filled with tears. "From the truth." Before she could continue, loud noises erupted from the main gate. A black SUV sped through the driveway and came to a stop. Two men stepped out, shouting, "Grace, you can't hide anymore." Michael's confusion turned into alarm. "Who are they?" he demanded. Grace's hands trembled. "They're from your father's past. He trusted them once." Before everything fell apart, the men stormed in, one of them holding a file. "You really don't know, do you?" One sneered at Michael. "That woman isn't who you think she is." Michael stood protectively in front of Grace, his heart pounding. "You're not coming in here," he shouted. The man laughed coldly, tossing the file at Michael's feet. "Then see for yourself." Michael picked it up. Inside were old, faded photographs, Grace and his father together, smiling, holding a baby. His hands trembled. He turned to her, his voice breaking. "Grace, who is this baby?" Tears streamed down her cheeks as she whispered, "You are." For a moment, the world stood still. Michael stepped back, unable to breathe. "What are you saying?" he stammered. Grace's voice trembled with emotion. "I'm not just your maid, Michael. I am your mother." The rain began to fall outside, heavy and relentless, echoing through the empty mansion. Michael stood frozen, disbelief and pain flooding his face. Grace took a step closer, her voice shaking as she said, "But that's not the only secret your father left behind." The thunder roared, the lights flickered, and in that moment, Michael realized his return home wasn't just about inheritance. It was about uncovering a truth buried in silence, love, and betrayal. And the truth he was about to learn was far from over. The thunder outside grew louder, lightning flashing across the glass walls of the Aidwale mansion like the sky itself was reacting to Grace's confession. Michael stood frozen, his breath caught somewhere between disbelief and heartbreak. You're my mother?" he whispered, his voice breaking. Grace's tears streamed down her cheeks, glistening under the dim lights. "Yes," she said softly, "but I wasn't supposed to tell you. Your father made me promise. He said the truth would destroy you." Michael's jaw tightened. "Destroy me?" His voice rose, anger finally spilling through his calm exterior. "All these years, I thought you were just a maid, someone who worked for my family. You watched me grow up, knowing the truth, and you said nothing." Grace stepped forward, trembling, her hands clasped tightly. "Your father wanted to protect you from shame. He built his empire by hiding the past, by hiding me. He was engaged to another woman when I got pregnant with you. If the world had known, it would have ruined everything he built." Michael shook his head in disbelief. "So I was his secret child, raised in his house as a stranger." The storm raged on outside, the rain hammering the windows like a drumbeat of fate. Grace's voice quivered. "I wanted to leave, but I couldn't. I couldn't walk away from my own son." Her words cracked in the silence. "When he died, he told me one thing. When he returns home, tell him the truth. Let him decide who he wants to be." Michael turned away, his reflection fractured in the mirror. "And what if I don't know who that is anymore?" he said quietly. He picked up the old photograph again, the image of his father, smiling with Grace, holding baby Michael. For years, that smile had been his symbol of perfection. Now, it was just a reminder of lies. Suddenly, a knock echoed through the mansion once more. Michael tensed. Grace's eyes widened. "Stay here," he said sharply, walking toward the entrance. When he opened the door, a man in a dark trench coat stood drenched in rain. He looked familiar, his eyes sharp, filled with something between sorrow and guilt. "Michael Aidwale?" the man asked. "My name is Daniel Aubing. I was your father's business partner." "And his enemy?" Michael narrowed his eyes. "Why are you here?" Daniel sighed deeply. "Because there's more you don't know. Your father didn't just build his wealth with brilliance. He built it with betrayal. And your mother," he glanced at Grace, "was part of the secret that could destroy everything he left you." Grace gasped softly. "Don't do this, Daniel." "Not now." But Daniel stepped inside, ignoring her plea. He placed a sealed folder on the table. "In this file," he said, "are records of offshore accounts, hidden companies, and the reason your father cut ties with me. He took what was mine, but he did it for someone," his gaze fixed on Grace. "For her. For the woman he loved." Michael stared at the folder, his mind spinning. "So you're saying my father's empire was built on lies?" Daniel nodded slowly. "He betrayed his partners to protect his family, you." The air in the room grew heavier. Grace clutched her chest, her breathing uneven. "He did it for love, Michael. He wanted you to have a future, even if it meant others hated him." But Michael wasn't listening anymore. His mind was replaying every moment of his life, every time he looked up to his father as a symbol of honor. Every time Grace had stood quietly by, knowing he lived inside a web of secrets. "Leave," Michael said to Daniel in a low, firm tone. Daniel hesitated, then nodded. "Just remember," he said before walking away, "some truths set you free, others bury you." When the door shut, silence filled the space again. Grace reached for Michael, but he stepped back. "You should have told me," he said, his voice hollow. "All my life I worshipped a lie. I don't even know who I am anymore." His hands trembled. "Do you know what it feels like to be raised by your own mother and never know it?" Grace fell to her knees, crying softly. "I lost my right to call you my son the day I agreed to your father's plan. But I've loved you every second since." Michael turned away, his heart breaking but his anger still burning. Days passed. The storm outside cleared, but the one inside the mansion remained. Michael stopped speaking to Grace. He locked himself in his father's study, going through files, documents, and letters, each revealing fragments of the man he thought he knew. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, he found a hidden video file on his father's old computer. When he pressed play, his father's face appeared on the screen, aged, tired, and full of regret. "My son," the recording began, "if you are watching this, it means Grace has told you the truth. I made mistakes, terrible ones. I built an empire but lost the right to be honest with you. I wronged Daniel, I wronged your mother, but everything I did was to give you a name that no one could take away. I hope one day you'll forgive me." And her. Michael's eyes filled with tears. His father's voice, once a symbol of strength, was now trembling with guilt. When the video ended, Michael sat in silence for a long time. Then, slowly, he stood and walked to the garden where Grace sat quietly, staring at the night sky. She turned as he approached, fear flickering in her eyes. But instead of anger, she saw something else, pain mixed with compassion. "You should hate me," she whispered. Michael shook his head slowly. "Maybe I should. But I don't. I've realized something. Grace love isn't about perfection. It's about truth. And you've carried the truth alone for too long." Tears streamed down her face as he continued. "You gave up your life to protect me. You lived in silence so I could live in peace. That's not weakness, that's love." He took her hands gently. "You're not just my mother. You're the strongest woman I've ever known." Grace sobbed openly now, her shoulders shaking as she whispered, "I never thought I'd hear you call me that." Michael pulled her into a tight embrace, and for the first time in decades, she felt the warmth of being truly seen not as a maid, but as a mother. Weeks later, the Aidwale mansion no longer echoed with secrets. Michael decided to rebuild everything his father had left behind, but differently this time. He reopened the family foundation, renaming it the Grace Initiative, dedicated to helping single mothers and children who had been forced to live in silence. The community began to whisper about the millionaire who gave away half his fortune, but Michael didn't care. He finally knew who he was, not just the son of a rich man, but the child of a woman who had sacrificed everything for love. One evening, as the golden sunset painted the Nairobi sky, Grace stood beside her son on the mansion's balcony. Both dressed in elegant modern attire, they watched the horizon together. "You've made me proud, my son," she said softly. Michael smiled, his arm around her shoulders. "No, Mama, you made me who I am." The camera of life panned out slowly, the mansion gleaming, the wind gentle, the air filled with peace. The woman who once lived as a maid now stood beside her son as an equal. And the boy who once lived believing lies had found his truth through forgiveness. In the end, the story of Michael and Grace reminds us that truth hurts, but silence destroys, and forgiveness heals everything that lies have broken. What would you do if you discovered your whole life was built on a lie? Would you forgive or walk away? Tell us in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful African stories that touch the heart and inspire the soul.